Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We'll chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। Gently open your eyes. We'll chant from verses 66 to 70 of chapter 2. Nasti buddhirayuktasya
नास्ति बुद्धिरयुक्तस्य
न चायुक्तस्य भावना
न चायुक्तस्य भावना
न चाभावयतः शान्तिः
न चाभावयतः शान्तिः
अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्
अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्
इन्द्रियाणां हि चरताम्
इन्द्रियाणां हि चरताम्
यन्मनोनुविधीयते
यन्मनोनुविधीयते
तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञाम्
तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञाम्
वायुर्नावमिवाम्भसि
वायुर्नावमिवाम्भसि
तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो
तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो
निगृहीतानि सर्वशः
निगृहीतानि सर्वशः
इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः
इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता
तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता
या निशा सर्वभूतानां
या निशा सर्वभूतानां
तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी
तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी
यस्यां जाग्रति भूतानि
यस्यां जागृति भूतानि
सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः
सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः
आपूर्यमाणमचलप्रतिष्ठम्
आपूर्यमाणमचलप्रतिष्ठम्
समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत्
समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत्
तद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे
तद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे
स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी
स शान्तिमाप्नोति न कामकामी।
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So last week we had entered into verse number 66. I was explaining to you initially about the different approaches to motivate yourself. It is not only how you motivate yourself, but different approaches which a master employs to motivate the student to be in the path. Now, when different approaches are given, you may get a little confused as to which approach should I use, which approach will be suitable for me. Actually, there is nothing like which approach will be suitable for whom. Everything is suitable for everyone. It is just that at different periods of time, the application of these principles will keep varying. This is a very important point which you all should note as sadhaks. It will be extremely useful for you. That is, in the yogic approach, we learn to differentiate between the principles and the practice. The principles and the application. Supposing we take one principle, the application of that principle will be varied. It will vary according to the place, it will vary according to the time, it will vary according to the individual growth, the level, what level the person is. So many factors are involved. Now, most people get caught up with the application. They confuse the practice or the application with the main principle. The moment you make a mistake there, then what will happen is your understanding of that principle will not be deep. It will be restricted only to that particular application in that particular context. I'll give you some examples, then it will become very clear. Now, supposing we take the example of being not addicted to any substance, any drug. Now, this is a principle. Now, supposing a person is an alcoholic, then what you tell him is you should not be addicted to alcohol. Now, if he does not understand the total principle, which is that of that of addiction, he will mistake the application. He will think, okay, I should not be addicted to alcohol. So what will he do? He will choose some other object. It may be a drug, some other addictive substance, and he will get addicted to that. But he will give up his addiction for alcohol. Now after that, you ask him, are you still addicted to alcohol? He'll say no. But now he has developed a new addiction. Now again you tell him, no, you should not be addicted to this particular drug. The moment you tell him that, he starts practicing that. But in that process, he gets addicted to some other drug. Now, in this example, when you are asking him not to be addicted to alcohol, what you are actually meaning is that you should not be addicted to anything. Addiction actually weakens you. But he finds it difficult to understand that principle. It is very easy for him to understand the practice in that particular context. See, since he was an alcoholic, you told him that don't be addicted to alcohol. But supposing another person was addicted to some other drug, you would have told him don't be addicted to this drug. So when he follows the application of the principle, that is the practice of the principle in that context mechanically, even though it will look as if he is getting results, in the sense he has come out of the addiction of alcohol, but he has actually not conquered the weakness. He will never be able to conquer that weakness. As long as that weakness of getting addicted is there within, he is going to get addicted to something or other. It is very easy to communicate the practice of a principle in one context, but it's very difficult to communicate the principle per se. Similarly, from the student's point of view, it is easy to understand the practice of a principle in a particular context. But to understand the principle in totality is what takes time. So a master comes and tells a student, now you need to be very prompt. I'm giving a very practical example. He says, anything which you do, you should complete it then and there. For example, supposing you are drinking a glass of water. You're sitting on the sofa and you're drinking a glass of water. Now after you finish, you're getting up to go to another room for some work. Now what is suggested in spirituality is complete that action. Now when you get up and go, take the glass and keep it wherever, whether you have to put it in the sink or wherever you have to keep it. Complete it and then go. But what the mind will do is it will not want to complete it. It will postpone. It will say, okay, I will keep the glass in its place later. It will postpone and go to the next work. Like this, many things you will keep you will keep postponing. So when a master observes this, he may tell the student, listen, whenever you drink a glass of water, when you're sitting on the sofa, when you get up, immediately go and complete it. Put the glass in the sink and then continue with your work. Now, even though the master is talking about the glass as an example there, because that is a context, the principle is not about keeping the glass there in position. The principle is about completing your actions, not postponing. So if a student practices this application mechanically, he will keep the glass in the sink. But when some other object, he will not practice that. When he goes to work and he's doing some work, some important thing is there and he postpones that. Now the tendency to postpone has not been conquered by him. So he'll continue to postpone. Whereas if a student applies and practices the principle as he is absorbing the practice from the master, if he does sadhana and goes deep, which is what the yogic approach is, and understands the principle behind what the master is trying to say, then he will conquer the weakness from within. At one go, he will master all the applications. It is very easy to mechanically practice these things. The moment we talk of motivation, or even the doing the yoga sankirtan sadhana every day, doing your physical exercise, the kriyas every day, whatever practice is given, it is easy to do it mechanically. But when you do it mechanically, even though you are practicing it, you will not master, you will not understand the principle in depth. Now, why I am telling you this is, sometimes, the most tricky part of this wisdom is that the principle will be the same, but the applications will be exactly the opposite. If a person is, let us say, sick, then the master will say, you skip your kriyas today, you do some relaxation, give rest to your body. That will be the application there. But if a person is lazy, he will say, you will have to step up your kriyas, do more kriyas. In both the cases, the principle is that of health. But if you see the application, in one case, the master is saying, do kriyas. In the other case, he is saying, don't do kriyas today. So if you mechanically practice it, you will not get anywhere. So in the yogic approach, what we do is we penetrate so deep and absorb the deeper principles of this ancient wisdom, which is what takes a lot of time. The application will be varied. If you want to apply this wisdom in India, that will be slightly different. If you want to apply this in USA, that will be subject to whatever the laws there are, whatever the social norms there are. See, even when we had this 22-day course, I was focusing more on the principles of health. That course now it is available online as an empowerment course itself. So anyone can benefit by registering and doing the course. In that, what I have focused mainly is on the principles only. We can't have a standard practice. That is why if you see at different periods of time, different masters came and the practices they gave looked totally different. Like even if you take the yogic texts, one master says you should not have a bath early in the morning. A yogi should not have bath early in the morning. Now, some other siddhas, they say you should have bath only early in the morning. That is very beneficial. Now, which one are you going to practice? Again, you have to see the context. When the first master said, don't have a bath early in the morning, he was talking to students who were living in the deep forests of the Himalayas, where the temperature was, was getting into below zero. So for them, he said, don't have a bath because there's a chance of catching cold and all that. But the other Siddhas who said have a bath early in the morning, they were coming from the southern part of India, where the basic weather was quite hot. So they said have a bath early in the morning. Now the principle behind both is one and the same, but the application is exactly the opposite. So whenever a master is giving this wisdom, see, he has to give the application only according to the context. But as sadhaks, as students, what you should do is not mechanically take the application and try to follow it in your life, but you use the application and you try to understand what is the principle which the master is trying to convey. That requires a certain amount of effort from your side. People want just mechanical practices today. They don't have the patience to put an effort to go into the depth. If you take Arjuna, it's very interesting when we go to the next chapter, the third chapter, and then in the fourth chapter, he keeps repeating the same question. He gets confused when Krishna gives him so many principles. Instead, he tells Krishna, Krishna, why are you telling me so much? On one hand, you're saying I should gain knowledge. On the other hand, you're saying I should act. Now, tell me one thing, what should I do? Should I gain knowledge or should I act? So he is asking for a mechanical principle. But Krishna does not give him a straight answer. He says, if you are contemplative, you should gain knowledge. If you are active, you should get into action. And what is interesting is, every human being is sometimes contemplative, sometimes active. So everything has to be practiced in an integrated way. So even though Arjuna gets impatient and asks Krishna for a mechanical practice, Krishna does not encourage that. No true master will encourage that. That is why when you go to a master and ask him, should I do this or should I do that? He will not tell you do this or do that. Sometimes he may tell you, supposing you don't have the capacity to penetrate and the situation is very important for you, he may give you a guidance and say it will be good if you choose this. But he will not stop with that. As you're practicing that, he will try to expand your vision, expand your understanding, and make you understand the principle of spirituality. So people always ask, sir, is wealth good or is wealth bad? Again, it depends on the context only. Supposing you have a weakness for wealth. Wealth here I mean money, If you're a slave to money, then it is not good for you. But if you're not a slave to money, you don't have that craving, then wealth is very good for you. You can utilize it to fulfill all your duties. So you can never give a yes or no when it comes to a practice. Some people ask me, sir, which is more fast, the path-wise, Jnana Yoga or Bhakti Yoga? How can you answer that? For a person who is predominantly contemplative, Jnana Yoga will be faster. But for a person who is predominantly emotional, Bhakti Yoga will be faster. Actually, everybody is a combination of all, so you'll have to combine and do anyway. So when you don't understand the principle, that is when you ask questions like these. So week after week, so many points are being given when it comes to application. But if you carefully penetrate these various applications, you will find that one or two principles will be covered there. That hidden message is what you should attempt to absorb. So when we were talking about motivation, in one context, he was using the principle, the application. The principle is that of motivation, but when it came to application, in one context, he said, "Buddhinashat pranashyati." If beware, if your intellect goes, you lose everything. It was like a negative statement, but that is meant to wake people up from the tamas. And then in verse number 65, we saw him taking the approach where he was telling all the positives which you will get when you do sadhana. Your mind will calm down, your intellect will become very sharp, so many positives. Now in verse 66, he is using another approach where he says, if you don't do sadhana, what all will you miss? Now, as and when the context comes, I have been telling you, this you can use for motivation, this you can use for motivation. Now, your question will be, which approach should I use? Verse 66 or verse 65, or should I use the other approach of, giving a warning to myself? What should I absorb? You have to absorb everything which is being given. And according to the context, you need to change your practice. A yogi is very, very firm when it comes to principles, but when it comes to application, he is very flexible. You can't be attached to the age-old practices. See, for example, if you take the ritualistic part of of the Vedas, now the rituals have been changed by different masters at different periods of time. Which one are you going to follow? But all these rituals have deeper principles. That is what you need to follow. According to the times, you need to change the application. If you have one practice for all situations, then you will get into problems. Actually, you will not be able to sustain your practice. A person asked me, he said, sir, I'm traveling he was going from Chennai to US, and he had to catch a couple of flights and he was going. So he told me that I'm going from here to UK and then from UK to US. So how do I keep in touch with the Yoga Sankirtan Sadhana? Because I have kept this practice of doing the sadhana at in the Brahma Muhurta every day. I wake up at 4 and I freshen up and I do the sadhana. Now when I am going, I have to pass through many time zones. So how is it possible to practice? So 2-3 days there will be a break in my discipline. So then I told him, no, you should not be so rigid. When the time zones are changing, you don't need to now calculate and see what is 4 a.m. and all that, especially when you're in the flight, because throughout the journey you're only going, the major portion you're only going to be seated. So whenever you feel like doing the sadhana, you do it there. So a small adjustment, that flexibility is required. When a person does practices the spiritual principles mechanically, he or she will become very rigid and orthodox. Orthodoxy is not spirituality. Being flexible is spirituality. Again, when I say being flexible, not being flexible with respect to principles. A person who evolves spiritually, a yogi, is very, very open-minded. He will see, just as you can't have one shirt, let's say we have one t-shirt, and then we expect everybody to fit into that size. It is not possible. The principle there is you will have to wear clothes. That is the principle. Now, according to each one's size, you will have to vary the, when you're stitching, you have to vary the size. It is the same thing when it comes to spirituality also. So as you are gaining all these points and as you are trying to practice them, ensure that you don't become rigid with these practices. The moment you become rigid, you will start judging yourself and you will start judging others also. Those who are not practicing that, you will think they are not spiritual. They may be practicing the same principles in their context. How do you know? So, different approaches to motivation which we saw. In this verse, he is taking this approach. What will you miss when you don't do something good? This is meant for people, or it is meant for you whenever you get into the mood of complacency. This is a kind of a tamasic contentment. Everything is going on fine. My life has no problems, A classic example of this in our Shastras is the character of Lord Indra. Indra is supposed to be the god of heavens. Now, who is Indra? What is the heaven? The heaven is nothing but the results of whatever good karmas which you do, the enjoyments which you get in life has been called as heaven. Now, Indra is a person who has done certain good karmas, as a result of which he gets certain enjoyments, the heavenly enjoyments. But invariably, he stops doing his sadhana. Once he gets into that position, once he gets the various enjoyments, thereafter, he doesn't find the necessity to do any sadhana. Why? Because life is going on very smooth for him. It's a beautiful depiction. So it is not enough if you read these stories and understand, oh, Lord Indra is the god of heavens and all that. What does Lord Indra represent within you? Lord Indra, he represents so many things. One of the things which he represents within you is that tendency to become content in a tamasic way when your life is going on fine. When there are problems in your life, you will be forced to grow. But when everything is going on fine, that is when you need to be doubly careful, because the tamas is waiting to engulf you. The laziness is waiting to pull you away from your efforts. So whenever the Indra in you is active, immediately apply this approach. Okay, things are going on fine today, but if I skip my sadhana, what all will I miss? These enjoyments are are anyway temporary. They have a beginning and they have an end. But what is my ultimate goal? So all these questions, if you start asking yourself, then you will again become motivated to do sadhana. So you will face these two challenges when you're doing sadhana. Whenever you face a lot of problems, that time also you may get caught up with the problem so much that you may lose your motivation to do your sadhana. At that time, apply verse number 65. If I do sadhana, what benefits will I get? How I can overcome all these problems? So that will motivate you. Now, whenever everything is going on fine, it's life is always it goes like it is up for a while and then it goes down for a while. So when you're on a high, when everything is fine, again you may get involved in that. You may get into a tamasic contentment and you may stop doing your sadhana. At that time, apply verse number 66. It is not only in different phases of life, but even on a daily basis. In the morning you may get into one mood, in the evening you may be in another mood. So according to your according to the varying moods of the mind, you need to vary the application of these principles. Then you will be successful in your sadhana. So what is he saying in verse number 66? There is no intellect for the one who is not united. Na asti buddhihi ayuktasya. For a person who is an ayukta, who is not united, today we'll see the deeper aspects of what is it to me to be a yukta. See, when he is putting it in double negative and says no intellect for a person who is not united, which means we'll have to see, we'll have to convert the language. So if you are united, your intellect will be very powerful. So how to become united? What is the deeper meaning of being a yukta? All that we'll see. And then nacha yuktasya bhavana. And for the one who is not united, there is no bhavana, there is no faith. And then he continues further. If you don't have bhavana, there will be no peace. And if you don't have peace, you will not have happiness. So the starting point, the key principle in this verse is being a yukta, a united one. When you are not a yukta, when you are an ayukta, he says all your problems will start. You will start missing wonderful things which the sadhana has to offer. So where the meaning of yukta in a general way, yukta means being united, being integrated, being a whole person all the time. A yogi is one who is very much integrated. His energies are not dissipated. He doesn't fritter away his energy here and there. Whatever he is doing, he will do it fully. He will do it as a whole person. Whenever you perform any action, if you observe yourself, you will find that your energies are frittered away in so many things. You may be anxious about the fruits of the action, what will happen in the future. You may be very much affected by something which happened in the past. Last time you did that action, it didn't give you good results. So that may affect your mind. Or some other problem, that is a problem in another area of your life, may bother you so much. Like this, if you observe, your energies are always frittered. Now, the first thing, if you want to become a yogi, what should you do? He says you should become a yukta. Yukta means now you should gather your energies. The energies which are being frittered away in so many directions, you should start gathering your energy. The moment you gather all your energies, then you become a whole person, an integrated person. And when you are a yukta, everything which you do in life will give you success, because you will become so powerful, you will become so focused. So that is why he is saying, when you are an ayukta, then there is no intellect, he says. There will be no thinking. Your decision making will not be sharp. You will have no presence of mind. Your analytical powers will not be there wherever is required. You will be a confused personality. See, you take any field and you read the story of a person who is successful in that field. Relatively, when compared to others, that person will be a yukta in that field. Supposing a person is a musician, a top musician. Now if you read what he is practicing, you will find that he would have had some goal, and then with a lot of passion he would have pursued that art, the music. Relatively, with respect to others, many others also may be having the desire to become musicians, but their personalities would have been too much dissipated. So a person who becomes a yuktaha, he becomes successful in that field. Whether it is a field of music, or whether it is in the field of sports, whether it is in the field of business, anything which you do in life. The question is, are you a yuktaha or are you an ayuktaha? Are you a united person, an integrated person, or are you a person whose energies are running helter-skelter? Are you a person whose energies have been frittered away? So as I told you last week, one thing is to be skillful in a particular field. But in order to use that skill effectively, you need to be a yuktaha. The more yuktaha you are, the more integrated you are, the more whole you are, the more you will be able to use your skill in order to achieve success. It is not only with respect to the world. When it comes to spirituality, the advanced levels in meditation can be done only by a person who is a yuktaha, who is completely integrated. That is why they never introduced the advanced practices just like that to everyone. They always taught the other sadhanas which will help a person to become a yukta. And not only that, when you are not united, he says there will be no bhavana. Bhavana means that attitude. I am giving you first a general meaning of these, the first two lines, and then after that we will go more deep. So bhavana means what is your attitude, what is the mood, what is the kind of feeling which you have, what are the thoughts which you have when you are doing your actions. The sincerity which you show when you do something. That is what determines your level of spiritual development. Actually, as you advance in spirituality, everything is nothing but bhavana only. External action means nothing. You may come and bow down to a teacher externally, but internally, if your bhavana is one of ego, what is the use? So it is bhavana which gives you life, which gives you that spark, which enlivens your life. Without bhavana, life will become very dry. You will become like a robo. A robo make tea for you and give, and you take the tea and you have it. Robo may cook food and give you, but your near and dear one, your spouse, may cook food and give you. There is so much of bhavana in that. Even though the robo may have used, it's a computer, it's computerized, right? So it may have used the perfect quantities and all that of the ingredients to cook the food, and the food is tasty, but still when somebody cooks with a lot of love and affection and serves you, that quality, that taste is different. There is a life in that. So bhavana is another very important quality which you need to develop in life. Now he says, when you're not a yukta, you will not have bhavana also. So what are the different dimensions of yukta? That we'll see now. It will inspire you so much, and each dimension is not only a source of inspiration for you, but as you absorb these and start practicing them, you will find that your whole personality will change for the better. So, out of many dimensions of yukta, I will give you 6 dimensions, 6 powerful dimensions. If you master these dimensions, you will become a towering personality. So the first dimension of yukta, yukta means being joined, being united. The moment we say be united, a person is united. Now you will ask a question, united to what? So if you want to be a yukta, what these masters are saying is you should be united, you should be joined. United to what? That is where you get a clue. This dimension of yukta, being united or joined, is with respect to the spiritual level, the spiritual aspect in you. I'm starting with that, then we'll come down one by one. So at the spiritual level, they are saying you should be a yukta means you should be joined, you should be united with what? With that infinite. God is not to be sought outside. Whatever you're seeing outside is only a reflection of what is there within you. That supreme power, that infinite power, that infinite being is there right within you, deep, deep within you. You are disconnected today. When you are disconnected from the infinite and you are connected with the finite, then you have become an ayukta at the spiritual level. So whenever you make any attempt to join, to get connected with the infinite within you, then you are practicing the sadhana of being a yukta at the spiritual level. At every level this yukta is applicable. Each dimension is at different levels of your personality. So when you go to a master, This is one of the things, he makes you a yuktaha first at the spiritual level. Even in the nididhyasana meditation practice which we do every Sunday, one of the key things which is being done is making you a yuktaha at the spiritual level, getting you connected with the infinite. The more you are connected with the infinite, the more powerful you will be. When I say you, I mean you as a consciousness. What is the difference between a master and a normal person? A master is always connected with the infinite. A normal person may be doing the same thing. See, both of them may be doing the same action, but a normal person is disconnected from the infinite. So if you want to become a yukta, every day you need to spend some time to get reconnected to the infinite. When you do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana on a daily basis, that is so conducive, because the vibrations which are being provided there, the entire energy and vibrations which are present in the Vedas, which is actually present in the cosmos, has been packed and given to you. So when you expose yourself on a daily basis to those vibrations, your consciousness will start rising, and it will start getting connected with the infinite within you. So at the spiritual level, joining or being united. Externally, you will not be able to find out. Actually, supposing a person is praying, let us say every day, he is with folded palms, he is making a big show of his prayer, he is doing extensive puja and all that, but his mind is not there on God. His mind is attached to various other things. Then that person is actually not truly spiritual. He is not a yukta. Another person may not do any formal rituals or worship, but if he is doing the sadhana, the inner sadhana, and if he is putting in efforts, if he or she is putting in efforts to be connected with the infinite, then that person is spiritual. That's why in the Bhajagovindam, Adi Shankara says, he says, Yogaratova Bhogaratova Sangaratova Sangavihina. Means you may be in yoga, here yoga means external practice, or you may be in bhoga, means enjoyment. You may be Sangaratova, you may be amidst people, company, or Sangavihina, you may be in solitude, without any company. But all these things do not matter. They don't determine whether you are spiritual or not spiritual, he says. Yogaratova Bhogaratova Sangaratova Sangavihina. These things do not matter. The external practices do not matter. Then what is that which matters? Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chittam Nandati Nandati Nandatyeva. Means Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chittam. Brahman means that infinite, that supreme, one whose chit, the consciousness, is connected with that infinite. Such a person, Nandati 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 Eva, means that person is reveling, that person is truly spiritual. This powerful message he is giving through that verse in the Bhajagovindam. It's not only Adi Shankaracharya. Any master you go, They laid so much of importance on that connection. They never judged a person based on the external practices. See, you go by the external practices. If a person does these things, you think that person is spiritual. If a person does these things, then that person is worldly. That is your concept. But this is what is real spirituality. Real spirituality is not in the various external things which you're doing. It is not determined by whether you're studying the scriptures or not. It is not determined by whether you're going to a temple or any place of worship or not. It is not determined by whether you're doing your rituals or not. All these things are only conducive. But what is real spirituality? It is this, being a yukta, always united. So a master is one who is always united with the infinite. Why do they say that association with a master is satsang? Satsang means good company or company with truth. Truth means that infinite. Why? Because a true master is one who is always connected with the infinite. So when you get connected to a master, to your guru, what happens is those vibrations automatically you will also start feeling. Your very consciousness will get uplifted. So this is the principle. Again, I told you the principle and practice. So all the sadhanas which are being suggested are ultimately meant to awaken you, to expand your consciousness and get you connected with the infinite. If that goal is not set, then whatever sadhana you're doing, including even Yoga Sankirtan sadhana, will become a mechanical practice. That will help you only to a certain extent, but beyond that, it will not help you. So this is the first dimension, being united to the infinite at the spiritual level. The second dimension of yukta. Yukta means arrangement. Whenever things are arranged, we say it is in a state of yukta. Now, this is a very powerful dimension. It is at the intellectual level of your personality. See, the moment we say yukta, the integration has to happen at all levels of your personality. It is not enough if you say, I am connected to the infinite, but the rest of your personality is not at all aligned. Then your connection with the infinite will get broken soon. At all levels of your personality, you should be a yukta. So at different levels, the yukta, what is the application of this yukta is what we are seeing now, the different dimensions. So at the intellectual level, what is yukta? We get a clue from that dimension of arrangement, being arranged. Being arranged means in an orderly way. So a person who is a yukta, his thoughts will be very, very structured and arranged in an organized way. So if you want to become a yukta, at the intellectual level, just as at the spiritual level, you need to practice expanding your consciousness and getting connected with the infinite. At the intellectual level, you need to practice keeping your thoughts in an orderly fashion. What do I mean by that? See, today your thoughts are not arranged properly. They are they are there as in the form of a mass confusion in a very disorderly way. See, it is like a room, when you organize things in your room, it gives you so much of peace. When things are in a very disorganized way in your room, your mind also gets confused. It is not conducive for clarity. So if you want to develop clarity, what sadhana should you practice? Thinking in an organized way. I'll give you some sadhana tips also as we go along. But first you understand the principle, the basic principle. So if you open up the room of your thoughts, you will find that those thoughts will not have any direction. Just as when you keep things in a haphazard way in your room, then it causes so much of confusion. Another example we can take is that of your own PC. In the PC, everything, when you keep it when you have folders, different folders, when you keep all your files in an organized way, it becomes very easy for you to handle the PC. See, every thought actually is like a certain data which you're storing within you. Now, if that data is not useful to you, you need to delete that thought. When the data is useful to you, you need to store it. And even if you stored it, only if you have stored it, you will be able to use it when you want it. It's just like a PC only. What do? Every now and then you clean up your PC, right? Or whatever unwanted files are there, all that you delete. Whatever files are required, you keep them. Whenever you require a particular file, you're able to easily locate when things are organized. What we do is, we gather so much of information, so much of data, and then most of the thoughts which we have are all actually not at all required for us. The data which we are storing within our system, our inner system, most of it, 95%, 98%, they are not required at all. They actually pull your energies down. They cause harm to you. Yet we keep storing them. There is no effort which we put to organize these thoughts. So clear thinking starts with structuring your thoughts. So what is a sadhana which you need to practice? I'll give you some tips. Everything, see, like for example, you're having a conversation. Now just observe your conversation. What you'll do is, something will come to your mind, some thought. Immediately you will express it. And then the other person will say something. And then something unconnected next you will say. And then something further unconnected you will say. There will be no structure in your conversation. Similarly, when you're doing some activity, you will do one thing and then you will jump from that action to another action. From there to, it is not that you are jumping, it's your thoughts actually which are making you jump. So none of these things you will finish in a proper way. So as a sadhana, to become a yuktaha, you start practicing this, structuring your thoughts. Whenever you have a conversation, just observe yourself. If you're finding it difficult to observe yourself, observe the other person also. It's a very, very good sadhana, especially if you're in a group, 5 people are having a conversation. Now just observe that for a while. You will find that they will keep jumping from one thought to another thought without any aim, without any control. The moment you're able to observe that, it means you have taken the first step in building clarity of thinking. Why is it that you are not aware of these things today? Because you're also involved in that disorganized way of thinking and talking, and you're also involved in that conversation. So you will start from politics, and you will start from one person, and you will go to sports, you will go to religion, you will go to this, you will go that, you will from US this, there. So many things, like in a confused way you will talk. It's more like vomiting, you know. You will just vomit all your thoughts. That does not actually help you to become an integrated person. A yogi is one who chooses his thoughts. See, you have the power of choice. Unfortunately, since you have never exercised this power, what happens is today your thoughts are not under your control. So when you start doing the sadhana, whether you're having a conversation, whether you're eating your food, say supposing you're eating food, now your thoughts will come and go in a very disorganized way. But now you tell yourself, I'm going to think about the food in hand, and as I'm eating, only those thoughts associated with the food are going to be there in the mind. You enjoy the food. Initially you will find it that it's not so easy. The thoughts will run everywhere, but you need to do that sadhana. Then when you're working, you're doing a particular work, now again the thoughts will start running. Now get them organized and give them a direction. Whatever action you're doing, your thoughts should be structured towards that. Only those thoughts which are useful to you in accomplishing that particular task in hand, you should encourage. Now don't practice it for one day and then send a question to me saying that, oh Yogi Shri, I tried it, I'm finding it very difficult. It's a lifetime practice. A person does not become a yogi overnight. Masters have become masters by diligent practice of all these principles. Then when you are having a bath, again I'm giving an example, whether you're having a bath or brushing your teeth or whatever it is that you're doing, now do it in an organized way, in a structured way. There's so many thoughts will surface, but apply this. Practice choosing only those thoughts which are relevant in that particular context. It's a beautiful practice, and the more you practice this, the more clarity you will gain. You will become such a clear thinker. Your ability to penetrate situations will become immense. Your ability to penetrate situations, your ability to penetrate others' minds, your ability to penetrate your own mind, it starts from there. And then your ability to read situations, to read people, everything will be developed, you know. And for a person who has this clarity, he or she becomes very well prepared to get into the next advanced level, which is clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is opening up, by opening up the third eye, you tap certain higher powers of the mind. But you can't straight away do that. It starts with the simple practice of organizing your thoughts, arranging your thoughts. So number one, at the spiritual level, being united. Number two, at the intellectual level, organizing your thoughts. Don't do too many things at the same time. You know, this concept of multitasking which is there today. See, multitasking is applicable only if you have learned to focus your energies in one task properly first. Now today, people are using the word multitasking to cover up their weakness of getting distracted. See, they don't have the capacity to concentrate on one thing properly. So they are doing 10 things. And then when you ask them, they are giving it a beautiful name called multitasking. I know some people who can multitask in a proper way. That is okay. But in general, I'm finding people misusing this terminology multitasking. See, some ladies I know, when they cook, they do 4-5 things at the same time, but with full awareness. Amazing it is. They don't allow their thoughts to fritter away. If you're able to truly do that, fine. But otherwise, don't justify or cover up your weaknesses using such wonderful terms like multitasking and all that. Focus on becoming a yukta. So at the intellectual level, start doing this sadhana. A small practice which will help you, apart from whatever I gave you now, is the process of introspection. When you go to bed in the night, just for few minutes, run through whatever you've done right from morning till night, till that moment. Okay, today morning I got up, I did this, which means you're trying to organize the day which in your mind, whatever you spent that particular day. And if you have not been organized during the day, you will find that the introspection will be very difficult. That's why I'm saying you should finish it within a few minutes. If you're thinking too much, it means you've not practiced this sadhana of yukta during the day. So you can only do this introspection to your capacity. It should be very enjoyable. One person told me that he tried doing this introspection and he said, sir, all other sadhanas I am able to do, but this introspection every night I get very restless. That was because he was doing it way beyond his capacity. You just have to run through the different experiences, whatever you did from morning till that moment, within a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes, quickly. It's a beautiful practice because that will make you aware. If you're finding that difficult, it means you're not organized during the day. So doing the small introspection, if you're finding introspection in the night for the whole day difficult, then you can practice this introspection twice a day also. In the afternoon, after lunch, just few minutes you can relax just for a minute and say from morning till lunch, what did I do? That will clearly tell you how organized you are in life. So the more organized you become, the more clarity you will gain. The more disorganized you are, the more confused you will be. So if you want to become a clear thinker, this is the way. Okay, so do practice the sadhana. In the next week, I'll give you the other dimensions of yukta, and also we'll go further deep into the various principles given out in this verse. Amazing, because when we talk of bhavana is something which is amazing. The entire Nirvana Shatkam is based on the bhavana only, different bhavs, So when you master the sadhana of bhavana, that gives you so much of power. See, every aspect actually is aimed at purifying your personality and making you very, very powerful. Spirituality is not for weak people. You have to become strong, internally strong. Okay, so before we do the meditation, I'll take up a few questions which have come. A lady has sent this question. It's a personal question, so I'm not mentioning the name. Hari Om Yogeshri, in today's session, you had told that when we do sadhana and our mind becomes calm, intellect becomes sharp and awareness increases. So we start taking decisions firmly with awareness. Our capacity to handle pressure increases. Now I have got an opportunity of a job that has probably more challenges as well as good financial benefits. Should I look at the practical aspects, be aware of the risks of the new place before I accept the change of job? Example, the job security in the present job, known place, a good reputation as a performer in the present job, or take a risk and go ahead with the change. I don't have much financial backing in terms of huge wealth. If anything goes wrong in the new job, to take care of my requirements. So I don't know whether this is a tamasic nature or being aware of the practical aspects in the worldly life. It's a very relevant question. It will be useful for all the sadhaks. So on one hand, you are doing some work which you do, through practice and experience, you have become very proficient in that work. On the other hand, you get a higher opportunity, a promotion, or like what she's saying, some other job with more responsibilities. But she has used the word risks. There are many risks involved. It is true. Actually, any growth has certain risks involved. If you want to call it risks, you can call it as risks. But if you are well prepared to take up that challenge, they are no longer risks. They are actually higher grades of challenges meant for you to grow. See, when you're doing your exercises, initially, let us say, supposing you're doing your forward bending. Now, initially, you're able to bend only halfway. You're not able to go fully down. Now, for a few weeks, you're practicing that. As your capacity increases, then you will be able to bend a little further. Now, when you're not prepared, when your body is not prepared for bending a little further, that will be like too much of bending. It will be a big risk. You may injure your back. But if you practice and you increase your flexibility, then after a while, that extra bend, that which was a risk earlier, now will no longer be a risk for you. You will be able to get a comfortable stretch. Now again, if you go on practicing that, after a while, further stretch will become comfortable for you. So, whenever you are not prepared for something properly, that is when your mind will see it as a risk. So, you ask me now, should I take up that job or should I continue here? Now, it all depends on how prepared are you to take up that job. For a person who is well prepared, he will be willing to take that plunge. He or she will be able to take that plunge. That will be challenging. Actually, as you grow, a life without challenges will become boring for you. So you ask, should I be practical or should I take up the higher job? You should always be practical. If you decide not to take up that job, there should be reasons for that. Yes, I have not yet come to that level where I can handle those challenges, so let me first prepare myself. Then you are being practical. But if you decide to take up the job, again it should be done in a practical way. Yes, I have developed my abilities. I can take up the challenge and survive there. Then when you take it up, it becomes practical there. See, I've always said in spirituality, you should never lose sight of practicality. There is no standard formula for this. So, whenever you are in a dilemma, should I do this or should I do that? What I would request you is, you take down a sheet of paper and write both the options, and then the pros and cons of both the options, continuing in this job, in your case, continuing in this job or taking up that new assignment. So what are the pros, what are the cons? Specify them clearly. As I said, this sadhana of arrangement, the doing things in a structured way is what will give you that clarity. Now once you write down the pros and cons, you will be able to use the data and come to a clear conclusion. So always when you move from first standard to second standard, that pinch will be there. See, in any growth, a little bit of pain will be there. But it all depends on you only. Ensure that you are technically qualified to handle the higher grades of challenges which will be thrown at you when you take up that new assignment. Just because a person is a very good salesman, let us say, that doesn't mean he will make a good sales manager, because the role of a salesman is to sell. The role of a sales manager is not to sell. The role of a sales manager is to motivate and make the salesman sell. It is a different role. It is that of leadership. So he has to master the skills of delegation, so many other skills of leadership. So a gradual growth will ensure that you don't have too much of that insecurity or fear when you grow. A sudden growth, see, whenever you take up something which is way beyond your capacity, then the stress will be too much, you will not be able to handle it. So you've asked a gentle question, that is why I'm giving you these gentle principles. So now you make an analysis. This job which has come to me, now what level am I in? And how much of pressure is going to increase? So visualize yourself. This sadhana will give you that clarity. Sometimes, you should not fear unnecessarily. See, you're saying, I don't have the financial backing and all that. When you take up a higher job and when you make more money, then automatically the financial security will come. What we think is we should first have financial security, then only I'll grow. It is not like that. They are like two pedals of a wheel only. When you grow, that will give you more capacity to earn. So write down all these factors and then come to a conclusion. If at all you're taking up that job, if at all you're taking that plunge, do it with courage, not out of fear. If the fear is too much, it means you're not prepared. So when you make this analysis, when you write the pros and cons, it will become very clear whether your fear is unnecessary one, or is your fear, it is just caution. Caution is what you're calling as fear. So that will become clear to you. So based on that, you take a decision. So I've given you these guidelines. Do take, and don't worry whether your decision will be perfectly right or perfectly wrong. You surrender to the higher Shakti, do this sadhana and take a decision. The other thing is, you can also do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana, and towards the end, when your mind is calm, after all this analysis, just ask yourself, when the mind is calm, should I take up that job or no? Because when you're filled with the higher Shakti, you will get into the neutral position. Your mind will be very calm. So whatever the answer you get from within, that will be the perfect answer for you to take a decision. And one more factor you can consider is if you think that this is a totally different job, new responsibilities, then you can also find out what kind of training you can go through in order to get qualified for that. In most of the companies, when they give a promotion, they also give training. So that training period will help you to ease into those new responsibilities. So don't shy away from higher opportunities when they come to you. When you do your sadhana properly, higher and higher opportunities will come. Take them up. But whether you need to take it immediately or after a few months, that will depend upon these factors which I told you. How prepared are you? Or are you going to take it up and go through some training process? You can talk with those people there and get trained there, so that will help you. That will be like a buffer, it will help you to get settled down. Okay. And for there have been other questions also. Many other sadhaks have asked similar questions. So apply the same principle. Like one youngster has asked, I am interested both in engineering and medicine. Now which one should I take? He has taken max with science with biology. There is max and science in the 12th standard. So he has asked, now what should I take? So it all again depends. You apply this principle. See the pros and cons. When you see the pros and cons of both sides, you will be in a much better position. Whichever is more profitable, that you need to take, that you need to do. Okay. So other questions we'll see later. So today we had a very, very deep session. The different dimension, the first two dimensions of Yuktaha. In today's meditation, I'll be using the Nididhyasana principle to sow the seeds of these lofty principles, the energy behind these principles in the deeper layers of your personality, the deeper layers of your mind, which will help you to practice. Okay? Sit in a relaxed position and gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. With every breath, I am becoming more and more relaxed. Let go of all your stress. And become very, very relaxed. With every breath, I'm going deeper and deeper into myself. I am not this body. This body is outside me. I am not these various emotions and thoughts. I am connected to that infinite being, that supreme power within me. I am a yukta, a united one. From this moment onwards, I choose to be an integrated whole person. I have this power of choice as a human being. I exercise this power to keep my thoughts very well structured and organized. Whatever thoughts are not useful to me, I choose to release them through sadhana. My thoughts are very well arranged and structured. I am a very organized person. Everything which I do in an organized way. I am Swayam Prakashit, self-illuminating. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. Offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Slowly come back. Wriggle your fingers, your toes. Rub your palms together to create a warmth. Cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, your cheeks, forehead, top of the head, the back of the head and neck, and slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. So today we had a very powerful meditation session. You know, this principle which they are giving, that you have the power to choose your thoughts, is an amazing principle. When you have not put in any efforts in that direction, you will wonder, how is it possible? It's definitely possible. That is the very power of a yogi, this capacity to choose thoughts at will. So as you do your sadhana, you will also keep on acquiring these wonderful qualities. Before we end, the announcement is about the Yoga Sankirtan program, the empowerment program which we are going to have in April. As I mentioned to you, it is for 5 days. I think the details are available in the website. Few people have already registered. So this time it's going to be for 5 days, and the theme is tapping the power of the infinite. So I'm going to have certain special meditations. We'll be starting off with a very powerful meditation on day 1 to directly lift the consciousness and get connected with the infinite. So I'll be invoking a lot of healing Shakti, which will help you and which will prepare you for the higher, that is the increase of energy during the Yoga Sankirtan empowerments. And then on the final day, we are going to have another special meditation on balancing the different dimensions and different energies, balancing of all the energies, and complete healing will also be given. So this course is going to be very, very powerful. It will help you to materialize your goals. It will help you to purify your mind. It will actually help you to transform yourself and your whole life. So as I said, start writing down your goals, what you want to achieve in life. In the during the course, the meditation practices, empowerment practices, I'll be asking you to visualize your goals. I'll be giving you some time, and when the higher Shakti is invoked and passed on as you are receiving that, when you visualize, your goals will start manifesting. But for that you need to become very clear about what you want. So right from now itself, you start writing down your goals. And for those of you who are registering, from the moment you've committed, I've already started the healing process. So you will start receiving the healing energy, which will prepare you tremendously for the program. So, but don't expect me to give you that preparatory healing energy before you commit. See, I want the commitment from your side. That is why we are having this registration process. Okay? So, and don't forget to do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana every day, which is going to prepare your daily sadhana is a must. Okay. Thank you very much. Hari Om.